Okay, so one other thing about virtue that, and chastity as a virtue, right, is that virtue is a habit, right? Virtue is something that you form over time, and it's something that you practice. And so when you first start practicing a skill, so think about like any skill that you could develop. So like you mentioned playing guitar, or if maybe you're a baseball player, right, or a basketball player, and you have some sort of move that you need to learn how to do, right? When you first learn guitar, you have to learn how to hold the guitar a certain way, put your fingers on the right strings, play them at certain times in order to make a tune, right? When you first start learning how to swing a baseball bat, when you're a kid, it feels really awkward, right? You have to think like, okay, I need to put my feet at a certain distance apart. I need to lean back on my right leg. I need to put up my elbow. I need to put my hands in a certain way on the bat, and then I need to swing in like a certain plane in order to make contact with the ball so that I can get a home run, right? And so that when you first start doing that, especially as a little kid, it's really awkward, right? Because you haven't really done it before, and you kind of have to like think about the steps in your head, like, okay, do my feet, do my hands, bring out my elbow, and then you have to practice it. But the more you do it, the more it becomes second nature, and then you experience something really beautiful. You experience freedom to actually play the game of baseball without fear, without thought, and you're just doing it. You're just going, and it feels awesome, right? So you're playing guitar, you're not thinking about it, you're just playing, and you're singing your soul out, and you're just like, you're having a great time. And so with chastity, what it is at first, when we start to realize this difference between love and use, and we start to realize that, oh, I haven't really been doing this naturally, it's going to feel a little bit awkward. It's going to feel a little bit different. But the more you practice it, the more beauty you're able to see in other people, in yourself, and in really just like the entire experience of relationship, whether that, again, is friendship or a dating relationship or eventually a marriage, or even just like your family relationships or your relationships with your classmates, teammates, things like that. So chastity is something that is meant to bring us to freedom, the freedom to truly experience love in a relationship with another.
Yeah, and so like let's also understand that we're two devout Catholics who are thinking about this and talking about this, but the idea of virtue was around many moons before Catholicism.
Right.
So Aristotle defined a virtue as the capacity to choose the good quickly, easily, and with pleasure. So now let's talk about that. When we're learning how to be virtuous, whether that be the capacity to play guitar, to hit a golf ball well, or to be chaste, at first it doesn't come. It's none of those things. So we have to think about it. It's not habitual, and it's hard. We feel it tugging one way and it tugging the other way, and it's not very pleasurable either. Right now, depending on where you are and where we are, it might be more pleasurable to do what's best to do what is pleasing to us and not for the good of the other. But as we develop our virtue, eventually all three of those things fall in place. So I just want to point out this idea that sacrifice is always bad or always displeasing. In a way, we will always encounter a lack of pleasure because of our fallen world. But virtue and the development of virtue can make it, in fact, pleasing to do the right thing. And you get to a point where you find it pleasing not to have sex before marriage, and you find it hurtful when people who you love are not practicing the virtue of chastity in any way. Remember, it's not just about sex and marriage. So you will eventually get to a point. This is a hopeful promise that I'm making to you, where it is pleasurable to exercise the virtue of chastity, just like when you're learning to play guitar. And you sit there for hours and your fingers are bleeding and you're like, this is dumb. Why am I watching the same instructional YouTube video for the 5th time? And you just want to smash your guitar. Or you're going to be at that point in your journey with chastity. Like you're going to be at that point at some point.
Why are we even doing this?
Yeah. But eventually you're going to get to the point where you and 3 of your buddies are just jamming and you're all free to improvise off each other and play with, and then it's magical, and you're like, this is awesome, and that's all you want to do is play guitar for the rest of your life. Well, chastity is a virtue. Virtue means that you can do it quickly, easily, and with pleasure. And so, take it from someone who I think I live a happy life, and I think Grace is pretty happy as well. And we both we both, as well as with millions of other people, we enjoy exercising chastity in our particular states of life. And, I know many married people who say that as well, priests who say that as well. Chastity becomes something that is pleasing and is fun.
It's free. You don't feel this pressure all the time. You don't feel this. Sometimes we can become enslaved, right, to a lust or to a use of another person. And it's slavery. It's the opposite of freedom. You feel like I can't not do this, and that's not a happy place to be if you think about it. That's something that is very unhappy and unfulfilling. But when you have this freedom, you don't even have to think about it. You just do it. It opens up a whole lot of different possibilities that you never had experienced before.
Remember Kristalina's story when she was, sort of pre-conversion, and she would be spending time with a guy, and she knew that they weren't going to be chaste. She said she felt this intense pressure because it was, when are we going to go to the next level?
Right.
When are we going to go to the next level? And then post-conversion, she's worked on herself. She's received healing. Her husband Jason has worked on himself. He's received healing. They meet post-conversion, and she just talks about this freedom of being able to sit on a couch with him for hours and feel safe.
Yeah.
And feel seen and never feel any pressure, because she knows that where they are right now is all that they need, because all they need is to will the good of the other. So the chastity now to them has become pleasant, because they can sit with each other and be safe and be happy and not be reaching for the objective, for an end, not be reaching for some form of use.
Right. So what they experience then is the true beauty and excitement and adventure of just being with another person and actually encountering that person and the good of that person, instead of just getting something external from them. So this is something that, again, we can't do this without grace. We can't do this without Jesus, because the whole reason that Jesus comes is to offer us the transformation, not only of our actions, but even, earlier in the process than that, he wants to give us the transformation of our very desires, the things that we actually want, right? So Mr. St. Cyr mentioned that when Aristotle, what were the three things about virtue? Quickly,
easily, and with pleasure.
Quickly, easily, and with pleasure. So that part, easily and with pleasure, again, if I have the virtue, I don't desire to do the thing that is unvirtuous, right? And that's what Jesus wants to bring us to, that point, to be able to not even desire to use another person, to not even desire or think about another person in a lustful way, right? There's still a good kind of desire. There's still a good kind of attraction, right, that remains. It's not as if he's removing that attraction from us or removing that desire from us, but he's allowing us to direct that desire towards actual relationship, love, and fulfillment. And so that's something that that Jesus is the one who offers us that grace to be able to be transformed.
Yeah, so let's talk about the word repression for an example. Repression is this idea that what you are made of is fundamentally bad, and so your desires, your attractions need to be shoved down, need to be hidden. Its ultimate root is Gnostic. It's this idea that the material is evil and what's good is the spiritual. But you weren't made as a spiritual being. You were made as material and spiritual, and when God made you, he pronounced you good.
Right, and we talked about that in the first two chapters. So when we read Genesis 1 and 2, God creates the world, the physical world, and after everything he creates, he says, it is good, it is good, it is good. And then he gets to the sixth day and he creates human beings, including their bodies, right? And he says, it is very good. And so this is something that we can't see the body, we can't see our attractions and our desires as something bad, but this is something that is very good. And before the fall, he gives Adam and Eve the command to be fruitful and multiply, right? So sexuality is a good thing that is created by God. So he doesn't want us to repress that, to pretend like that's something that doesn't exist, because that would be going against our very nature. And if we do that, it's going to be all bottled up inside and we might just explode, right? We might actually end up doing something that is dangerous or harmful, right, to ourselves. Right. And so it's not meant to be repressed, but what should we do, I guess, instead? How should we approach it instead?
Right. Well, so let's remember, we don't live in the garden, right? So God made us, and he made everything, and he pronounced it good. And then sin entered the world, and it changed us. So, we were changed once. Well, now grace entered the world. Through one man, sin entered the world, and through another man, grace entered the world. And we can be changed again. So we can be transformed. So, a metaphor, think about when you have a broken arm. Your arm is broken and it's not right, and you can't just walk around and be like, everything's fine, I'm all good. That's not what you want to do. But you know what else you don't want to do is just chop it off at the shoulder. Both of those are wrong.
Yeah.
You go to a doctor, you go to a physician, and they begin the process of healing. Maybe you have surgery, and then when the bone heals, it grows back stronger. So we do need a divine physician, and we do need transformation. Not repression, that's cutting the arm off, not just pretending everything's all good and sexuality and just go have fun and party and do whatever listen to your desires entirely.
Because that's going to actually end up hurting your arm more, right? Like if you just walk around with your arm just like flapping about, right? Like that's actually going to end up hurting and maybe even make the break worse than it already was, right? And so that's the sort of like shamelessness of just like, I'm gonna just not care if people are using me. I'm not gonna care if I'm using other people. I'm just gonna kind of do whatever the heck I want with my body at any given moment. The problem is the wounds that we have are gonna grow deeper, and the relationships are gonna break even more than they already are.
Right. So enter the divine physician now. Enter Jesus. And what does Jesus do? He gives us complete freedom, complete forgiveness, and then direction. So take the woman caught in adultery, right? He says, then neither do I condemn you. And then he says, go now and sin no more. So he offers us, first he removes the wound, and then he sets us on the path towards healing, sets us on the path towards living now completely healthy, completely ready to enter the kingdom of heaven, and without any infirmity, without anything holding us back. So we don't need a repression of our desires. We do need a transformation of our desires. And then what does that look like?
So transformation, direction towards love. So, I think it's the same thing as when you have that freedom to just play the guitar without thinking about it and you're just enjoying it. I think that it looks like the freedom of being able to just sit in the presence of someone that you love and just like laugh and talk and like share moments with each other without feeling any sort of pressure to use one another in any way, and you just can enjoy them in their presence. I think that it can be we talked about baseball or golf or something where you just love the game and you play the game and you're playing it well and you're hitting the home runs and it's just happening and everything's like magic and it's just going, right? And like that's the joy, that's the peace, that's the confidence and the security that God really wants to give us. And so because of our sin, because of the fall, we don't naturally experience that. And so Jesus, again, the whole reason he comes is to get us to that point of confidence, that point of freedom, and that point of real abiding love.
Right. Transformation is Christ washing the feet of his disciples. Transformation is when every time you look at another, you look at them with love in your heart, and you ask yourself, what is best for them? Use, and we all have a proclivity towards use. That's what concupiscence is looking at others and saying, what is best for me? Transformation is the long, and believe me, it is long, process of being able to look at everyone you see, whether it be your spouse, your children, the postman, co-workers, friends, and quickly, easily, and with pleasure asking yourself, what is best for them? And transformation is possible.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we need to know, because it is hard sometimes to get to that place that that it is possible, that Jesus does want to do it, and he would not call you to something that he wasn't going to give you what you need to actually achieve that. So he is here, he is with you. If this is something that you are thinking about seriously for the first time or struggling with, I just encourage you to hand it over to him, and to allow him to take you through that process, and to trust the person of Jesus to do it, and then also just to trust the process.
Yeah, and pray. we'll be praying for you, and we hope to see your smiling faces soon. But in the meantime, ultimately, Christ is the divine physician, so engage that relationship. Pray. Pray for this. Pray for everything. And all will be well.
See you later.